I'd like to welcome everybody this morning. First New Year to everybody. Happy New Year. My name is Jason Buckweitz. I'm the Executive Director here at the Columbia Institute for Teleinformation. Normally, you would see my colleague, Professor Ellie Noam, who will be welcoming everyone for this. Unfortunately, Professor Noam is currently flying to Oklahoma City. A good friend of his wife had passed, and he's going to attend the memorial service for her. So as much as he would like to be here today, he unfortunately could not miss that. So he did want to send his regards and looks forward to seeing the results of this meeting, because we're sure to have a wonderful event today. In order to introduce that event, I'd like to turn it over to our partner, Councilor Colo, professor who is also former head of the International Media Management Academic Association, who co-sponsors these events with us. So thank you very much, and take it away.
Thank you, Jason. Yeah, it's my pleasure today to moderate the first session of this joint seminar of Columbia University, Citi Institute, and the International Media Management Academic Association that I represent here today. We have a guest from industry today. Unlike the other seminars, we had academics, academics with industry background. We have a full-fledged manager, a CEO from Germany. He is German and he represents a German company. However, his insights should be relevant also beyond that. We welcome Dr. Christoph Bauer, the CEO of the Dumont Group, to be precise, the Dumont Mediengruppe. And Christoph has also a strong academic background. He has a degree from Mannheim and the University of Oldenburg, holds a PhD in the field of business studies, and he's actually used to talk to academics. I know him from several corporations, and we are looking forward to sharing his ideas in this mostly academic environment today. Christoph has an extensive experience beyond Germany. Before he joined Dumont, he was a manager with Bertelsmann, but also with Neue Zürcher Zeitung, Ringier, and AZ Medien in Switzerland. And in 2030, he took over Dumont from a patriarch from the Dumont family, as a professional manager, a trained manager with experience in diverse positions in the media industry. And he took over Dumont in a very difficult financial situation. Since then, he transformed the company, I would say, in its foundations. Unlike other news publishers in Germany, he developed Dumont from a newspaper company, a regional newspaper publisher, to a digital asset holder. What we mostly find among German publishers is rather a focus on market consolidation or portfolio modernization, and we will learn from Christoph how he transformed or innovated its business model. He will elaborate today on his entrepreneurial strategy, but also his leadership approach and the cultural change he initiated. And I think it's interesting to see how these different aspects are orchestrated and coordinated. Starting from this company perspective on Dumont, I think it's a good foundation then to discuss with Christoph his view on the general future of news publishing in Germany, but also in Europe, the role of international platforms therein, US-based platforms, and also the potential impact of regulation in an era where artificial intelligence today is an additional new driver to change. So having said that, the floor is yours now, Christoph. We are happy to listen to your presentation. You prepared some slides, and we have about 20 minutes of presentation now, and then we will embark in a Q&A session that I am happy to moderate. Christoph, are you ready with your slides?
Of course. And first of all, thank you very much for the invitation and having me here. I'm very interested in the discussions, more in getting answers out of the academic world. I've been always close to, after I did my PhD on the business model of newspaper publishing in the context of the internet industry more than 20 years ago. And thought back then I'd be very late in discussing this issue, and found out that we're still at the beginning of trying to get a new business model for content providers in a digital ecosystem. But let me introduce real quick our company and the story that we developed during the last decade. I try to do this on a more meta macro level because I assumed you would not be interested in all those operational details that make it happen at the end. So I just want to fly over the story and then explain our strategy and what comes with it, and where we still see the challenges. That's why I said we're still at the beginning, unfortunately. Well, yeah, as Christoph said, I had the honor to become CEO, first not family member CEO of a family-owned company that has 400-year company history and 200 years in publishing. And we, as Christoph already said, we had the first situation that basically the company invested in newspaper publishing houses that were already in bad situations in the cities of Germany. And so we concentrated on a business model before I entered the company on cutting costs and restructuring, which basically is when the top line is coming down, your core business model is cutting costs. So you do not get into the situation of developing a growth mindset and that growth on revenue and operational results. So the company, when I entered, it was almost bankrupt. So we had first to stabilize the company. We lost all bank finance and so on. And we had to change from the patriarch, which was top down, and a culture of fear was in the company. And so there was one guy deciding everything. The guy was 89 years old, great guy, very experienced, but so he lost kind of control over the company and was very intransparent. So we had to make a very first quick decision, which was important. First, we're gonna sell what's in a situation of emergency valuable, and then focus on the core, or do the more risky strategy and diversify the company while restructuring the newspaper segment. And the owner said, okay, we're gonna take the risk, and we're gonna diversify the company. And we did those in we did this in 4 phases. And the first was the turnaround phase of the newspaper publishing and the digitization of the content business. Then we start to spin off minor activities and bundle it in a different way, because we already had B2B publishing, but nobody cared about it, and nobody managed it, nobody developed it. So we gave them some awareness. And this was probably the most surprising part for the employees, but also for our competitors. We started to invest at a quite early stage for European standards into software as a service marketing technology companies. And I come back to that later. After restructuring the company, of course, we found out we could not be a growing company if we hold all those regional media publishing houses, especially in very difficult markets. Berlin is a horror market, the worst market for newspaper publishing in Europe for decades, and everybody's losing big money. It's just prestige objects. So we decided to sell half of our newspaper publishing business and focus on the home market, which is Cologne, which is the largest segment anyway. After that, and while diversifying into digital assets, and you can imagine that software as a service companies or startups or digitally driven companies, data management companies have different mindsets and cultures, and coming from a top-down approach. And of course, in the phase of restructuring, you're very close to the businesses and you have to take decisions, and you cannot really coach the business because you have to just get things done. And during that phase, this decade, we changed the culture more to a entrepreneurial spirit, that we encourage people to take their freedom that we give them into structures. But we found out that the structure we had as a company with a big overhead would not fit. So we realigned the group to a group of companies, not a group itself. We're very slim on the overhead now. I got 2 direct reports here in the holding company, which is my assistant and my CFO. And so we cut it from 80 people to 12. Just to give you an example, what does this mean in terms of culture and how we work together. So now we're in that phase of a group of companies. And how we develop, I'll show real quick. But we also changed the values that we set on, how we invest into the development of people, how we exchange know-how between independent business units. We really early, we invested into a sustainability strategy. A lot of time before we saw that the regulator is asking companies to do this in Germany, and we're a very KPI-driven company. Meaning we measure everything by KPI, and KPI. I mean that the KPIs are important to us that drive the business, not so much the financial KPIs that we have in a regular financial reporting. So everything we do is what does it generate? What KPI can be developed? Because we are mostly subscription-based businesses, because most businesses are B2B businesses now. But let me show our strategy picture to you. So what we did, we said, okay, we're a regional media publisher. We focused on the whole market, which is highly profitable now, and we are developing news portals, and this is the major issue we have not solved yet, like anybody else. But we focus on this market. We are not investing in consolidation of newspaper publishers. Second, we have a business information business, which is partly working for the federal state and partly for the finance industry and larger corporates, for example, and compliance management systems and so on, which is a data business driven business. So we expand this business step by step organically, and we also acquired 5 companies during the last 4 years. The scaling business is the marketing technology business, where we have software service companies that offer, for example, digital asset management, product information management, content management, not publishing systems, marketing resource management, or social media publishing suites. Why do we do this? Because this is what I get asked, because a lot of people understand that, okay, publishing and news publishing, now you digitize it on a lower economic level. Business information is a kind of publishing, and it makes sense that you invest into like workflow platforms and compliance management platforms or KYC offerings that we do for large financial institutions. But why do you do software itself? And we said, if you look at the media value chain, which was more or less a closed value chain 30 years ago before the sectorial conversion happened, and the disruption or the defragmentation of the media value chain, and say, what happens if all your advertising customers invest into the famous GAFAMs in order to scale their businesses? So either you believe that you build the next Google, Facebook, Amazon, and so on, which is a little bit ambitious, we thought, as a mid-cap family-owned company, or you find out how you support your customers in order of scaling their businesses in this digital ecosystem. And that's how we analyzed how CMOs work today. And to be honest, the innovative companies in America and in the EU, they focus on software systems, on seamless data workflows. And the most important issue CMOs nowadays have on their table is, what's your technology setup to scale your business? And we entered there because we know a lot about the customer needs. We know a lot about communication, and it's a software as a service subscription model. So we know we have a lot of experience in B2B marketing and selling offers that as platforms that support the customers to scale on social media, for example. So. But this, as a combination, helps to understand that we focus on one part, cash cow, business information we develop. It's very profitable, but growth rates are not as high. Growth rates in marketing technology last year was 37%, just to give you an idea, even though we went through an economic crisis in the EU, which was still in. So you can explain the strategy on focusing on regional media, expanding in business information, and scaling marketing technology, or look at it as we look at it. We are a content, data, and technology company, and all our units need those three assets. Of course, data is focused on business information, and technology is in the marketing technology segment. And of course, content is the core of regional media publishing. But you need all three of those elements in order to be successful in each of these segments. And so we generate the cash. We exchange the know-how between those segments. And this way, we managed to stabilize the company. And we are growing now for, after the sale of the publishing houses, for 4 years in a row, no matter what crisis you're in. The foundation of the company, and let's talk a little bit about the culture, is based on those 5 core values, which is very important for us. Everybody coming to the company has to go into a process or the project that we address the core values. It is not a top-down approach. It's the approaches that we say you have to find your own interpretation of those core values and how you think you can contribute to that and develop this. We call it the Dumont value world. And this drives a leadership approaches with that is focused on decentralization, entrepreneurship, and we have not so much control. My person coming from the restructuring phase, acquiring, changing, reorganizing. We set up the business in those 3 pillars, those 3 strategic business segments into 4 independent companies that have their own executive boards and that have their own supervisory boards. So, and I'm just the chair of those supervisory boards, so I'm not working in the segments themselves anymore. So why did we do that? We think the next phase, and we have been working on becoming a technology and now AI company for 2 years. And let me make this comment. Well before the ChatGPT hype happened, and we think that customer centricity and what you can learn from like companies like Amazon, so on, the way you innovate, the way you work together, the way you set up the organizations, even though you're bigger organizations, this will dominate the next phase. And this means we have to be able to decide. And we stopped all We cut down all the centralized corporate services we had, of course, meaning there's no centralized IT, the corporate IT, there's no centralized room and resource department. Everything's decentralized because the CEOs of the 4 segments have to be the entrepreneurs, and they have to be able to control full operations. So we do not focus on culture like metrics organizations where you have a boss that's telling you you have to deliver the KPIs, and then you have some staff telling you but you need to use another process. So we said we have full operations, but that's why the value world and the common activities like AI company, talent community, and the sustainability strategy is the glue that glues us together. So this is the explanation, the setup we have for we're in there for 2 years now, and it's going to be another 3 years. So we said we have to keep those structures in the company for about 5 years, and after 5 years we will probably change a little bit the structure again, because we assume that we would enter a new phase as a company, but we'll see when we get there. Coming to why is this not now? Just to give you an understanding of what this means in a corporate development. So as you can see, you see more or less 10 years in the years to come. The first circle you see is the digital share of EBITDA we generate. So we started on 26% in 2016, and we're going up to 80%. See that. So we are independent of the analog newspaper business economically, and then to see that how we developed the turnover, even though we sold a big part of the newspaper publishing side. You see EBITDA margin, how this margin and how this develops, and we are a lot of less people now. That's generating a lot more profit after that first phase of a portfolio transformation. And let me make this point: I don't like the expression of transformation. I know that in the States, I learned that you talk about transition. I like it a lot better because I don't want to give the perspective that this phase we're in would end, because that's why I love the idea of being in transition forever and reinventing yourself all the time. And transformation means there's a start and the end. And I think this is the wrong leadership culture that you generate if you work with transformation definitions. So anyway, this is how we developed the company on the financial side. So we are in good shape now, even though we had the crisis. We are year on year, we make more turnover and profit, and the figures are fine, and we're investing. But this is the entrepreneurial side, right? So we are a company that is related to former media core businesses and data and software as a service in the market area. There's a lot of know-how that we bring in, but in terms of the core business itself, it's different businesses. Let's check the strategy, portfolio, and organization part for the time being. You never end developing a company, and you're never happy with where you are. That's clear. But in terms of where we started and where we're now, and we are the first time we are driving business and not only restructuring. So we managed that. But we did not manage one thing that all the media companies that are in publishing did not solve. We're independent of a digital ecosystem that we do not, we have no influence on it, to be honest. To give you an example, we have a news platform, tabloid news platform, which is rather very successful, and it's even though it's a local brand, it's on the national level, it's really successful. Google core changed in March last year. Traffic dropped by half. So this is just to give you an example of what I mean. We're dependent on the digital ecosystem, dominated by big players. They're all American companies, which which is for the good and for the bad. And it's no coincidence that they're all American companies. But if you look at Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Facebook, and Apple, they're just system relevant and created an economy which is hardcore capitalism without any regulation, without any economic regulation. Meaning, and coming back to the definition of transformation. So I don't like the idea to newspaper publishers that say we're transforming the business. The truth, in my opinion, is you have a dying print business. And even though you're publishing with the same brand from the print and in the digital world, you have a new, small, and highly independent of GAFAMs, new business you should not mix up. And the issue is that in a digital world, all circumstances are different. And the economic potential, especially for local and regional content publishers, is like 15 times smaller than in the analog world. So meaning that there's a lot more offers because it's a cost of a transaction and changing sites is so low for the user, and most content is free, and so it's and everybody's saying, you got to go into paid content. Yes, we are in paid content, and there's only one New York Times in the world, and even if you look there closely, you're surprised how low the margin is in the digital offerings they have and how cheap they throw their valuable content away, and how they had to expand their content world far away from the New York Times core in publishing to be able to generate so many digital subscriptions. So we have not solved this. Why is that? And this is where I'd like to open the discussion. We see market fail and dominance of the GAFAMs in this content world. And I also see from my experience, and that's only because I'm Swiss, I talked a lot to Swiss politicians, but it's a small country. Germany still, the digital world is a small country. There's a few that are interested, and there's very few that know what they're talking about, but they have no clue why digital publishing is completely different to analog publishing. And I'm not talking only about local and regional news publishers. You can see it in TV now, because TV is imploding right now, because all the content is free, and serial television is not in need of the generation below 50, and all the advertising goes to GAFAMs. We see about 99% market share in digital advertising in GAFAMs in Germany. And I believe that in most Western countries, it's like that. And the next part is you could say, yes, but you have the EU and you have the United States as a large economy and strong institutions, and may say, but if you look at the institutional world, there's no institutions. We have also a lack of institutions that are regulating that. I always bring in the example of Al Capone. I mean, in the 20s and 30s, probably the most known gangster in the States, and they could not sue him for his crimes. But for tax fraud, I mean, I think it's like in the world here, the EU tries to sue Google for tax fraud, but not for what they really did in what they really do in the content world. There's a lack of awareness of all those challenges in Western societies, and this is where we as media failed, because we did not explain to society what it really means in terms of education. And there's very few possible areas of regulation that make sense on a national level, because it's our challenge, because the regulations happening on an analog, for an analog world, for an analog society, on national frontiers, and we all know that does not make a lot of sense in a frontierless digital world. And this is the last part. I see that all those associations we have for publishers and so on, they do not address those things right. Every approach the last 20 years failed. So there's no lobby, there's no support, and the leaders in those associations, and excuse my French, they're the old white guys that have no clue, and they know that they're losing relevance and importance. And when they talk to a chancellor and so on, or to some secretary of state, they are ashamed that they have to say, we have no idea where this is going. In short term, we're making a lot of money because we can say through technology, digitization of processes, AI will help to make processes faster and cheaper at the same time. So the next 20 years, there will be newspapers. The next 10 years, they will have some relevance. But I'm afraid after that, we will not have a publishing world in the that is comparable or nearly as competitive as we had before the internet era. This we have not solved. But we are able to manage this, and our owners will, in 10 years, and we are preparing already this phase, will have to decide whether they want to stay in that newspaper business and maybe finance this loss-making, then for sure loss-making business by other segments that are highly profitable. Yes. I don't believe in this concept, because only profitable journalism is independent journalism, even though you have an owner. Or if they say gonna sell it, close it, or if there will be maybe regulation that helps, for example, at a US base or at a EU base, set up circumstances and laws that lead to fair competition.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christoph. Thank you for sharing the details of this transition story. I remember you wanted to avoid the term transformation for a good reason. We may want to talk about that also. But you also opened the discussion to a more general perspective on publishing in Germany, in Europe, and the situation of the media at large. So I suggest that we start from the more specific to the more general, and I would like to ask you one question before we open the floor also to the colleagues. Could you elaborate a bit more on the resistance you faced driving this transition in Dumont? It all seemed very smooth. You shared this transition story, but I guess there was a resistance from within. And I remember also that the transition was also discussed by the broader public. How maybe you summarize a bit your experience with that?
Well, first of all, when I entered the company was in a existential crisis. This helped a lot. I mean, if the pressure's on, and I did not know if we would lose the company and go bankrupt in 2014. It was really severe. So in that situation, you got to drop it, or you got to take it and do it. So this helped a lot. And during those first, let's say, 3 years, that were kind of unstable. I had a lot of freedom, and we developed a lot of things just on the way. So there was no top-down strategies. You just had no time to do that. And we took the opportunities we had, and on those base, we found out we got a lot of great things on board, but nobody saw it, and we gave them more awareness. Of course, there was a lot of resistance, but I have to say the owners that had to admit that their way did not work, they said, okay, let's take an external guy and see what he's going to make. We cannot lose much anymore. So I was really lucky when I entered the company, first of all. But then, of course, the branch, the industry you're in, does not like if you say we diversify away from that core business. And all those journalists that never understood, even not in an analog media world, they never understood how their salary was generated. And in an even more complex digital world, they don't understand it at all. They just look at the reach they generate through their work, but not at the business model, which is one of the core issues when it said we as an industry fail to explain this society what changed and how digital publishing is so different. You got to be aware of what media and social media you use, also in terms of what data you give and what you support and don't support. And there was a lot of resistance, and we still do have that. But after 10 years, the people that really understand the business, they say, you know, there was a lot of pressure and there was a lot of bad press and so on. But you know what? Dumont, compared to all the others in our segment, did everything right the last 10 years. And it is also not true. Of course, this is not true. We failed on a lot of things and we are way too slow. And but if you go in a phase of transition, it's tremendous. And we're just in the middle of the AI era and don't know how to handle this seriously. And there's a lot of fear around, especially on the publishing side. And it's right to be scared. Because, for example, we introduced an avatar, which is an AI, and she's the most successful, the most read journalist on our tabloid news portal. And she became that within 3 months. Mm-hmm. You know, and there's a lot of fear around, and there's a lot of insecurity. But if you know your way and you convince the people that do the job, that was always the most important part. Did not care about the public, and we did not care about the branch that is always looking on the last year's results and said, yeah, let's take some cost out and it's still possible, and then we're very successful. And I think that only if there's growth in a company and there's innovation mindset up and you're able in a position where you can address the actual trends, which is all technology driven, and then you're able to survive when you're in publishing.
Thank you, Christoph. So I guess with also this said, we have a wonderful foundation for a broader discussion, and I invite you to ask your questions.
More than happy.
So
should I take those charts away? That's a little bit better.
There are specific questions now from the colleagues.
So I would just remind people to use the raised hand function if you have a question, so that we can recognize you.
Jens Wendland, please.
You're still muted. We cannot hear you.
You're still muted. You have to activate your microphone, Jens.
Thank you very much for your explanations. I'm a contributor from Berlin, and I have one question. Can you please explain us more about the incompetence of politicians in the digital?
That's it.
The reasons, and it is in a way it's a catastrophe in Germany. And how do you handle this?
Yeah, we cannot handle it. What I can see is there's this generation, like we have, for example, in North Rhine-Westphalia, there's a Secretary of State responsible for media. He's very competent. He's in his 40s, and there's a generation coming up when they're not in the position of power right now. But I'm pretty optimistic that the next 20 years, this will change. And we see it also in the EU Parliament, that there's a next generation coming up that's really interested in understanding that we have to regulate the digital ecosystem in terms of our democracy and journalistic content, if we want to keep it. And this also comes to a lot of complex issues if we go down there, because there's also, the public television and radio sector, which is financed more or less by tax. And in Germany, I mean, it's amazing. They have close to $8.5 billion a year. And this system was set up just for an analog radio and television world where frequency was not available. And so the state had to regulate it. But they're still living with these laws. And of course, politicians, there's no politician that wants to touch that. Because if you want to criticize that system, you're always against the system, which is not true, but we have to reform it. And so there's a lot of issues. The generation 55 plus does not understand exponential developments, technology, and digital ecosystems. They were not socialized to that, and they had no education on that. They're just users of platforms, first. Second, politicians and media, they have an ambivalent relationship, of course, because media should be very critical with politicians. So if the media industry has some issues, they do not really look at them. That's also say, no, let them suffer. They wrote bad things about me and so on. That's also an emotional part on that, which makes it really different. And I kind of formulated a little harsh that they're incompetent. They're all incompetent. But it's not only the persons, it's also the lack of institutions that connect with the academic world, because there's a lot of know-how. I know it. I read a lot of articles about it, but they're not connected. And that's one of the developments of our society, that, you know, the corporate world and the industry and the politicians and society, they're drifting away from each other. And we have to get them closer together. And so then that's where we're in the, what's the role of media in the society of the future? And we can see it, that we are in chaos in the bigger Western countries right now.
Thank you, Christoph. We have another question from Dave Burstein.
Hi, I want to take advantage of our European guest here. We've got a multi-billion-dollar lawsuit between the New York Times and OpenAI. And that's just going to hang around for 4 or 5 years till it goes to the courts, or if they don't settle it. Can you describe what's going on in Europe about that? I know that we're dealing with big US companies, and I suspect that gives you, the Europeans, a different perspective.
Yeah, actually, it's really different. And American companies, especially publishers, are a lot more willing to sue big tech companies. So we were not, because we were afraid of years of a lot of money and no outcome. I think this will be a game-changing issue, that the New York Times is suing OpenAI. We see what's going on out there. There's different perspectives. First of all, those AI players like OpenAI, they're also relevant for the digital ecosystems like Google and Facebook and Amazon and so on themselves. So you cannot work without them, but you cannot work with them. So at least you have to get money for the copyright because you generated the content. On the other side, I think, you know, even though it's the New York Times and I love it myself, it's a small company. And I think they're overrating themselves a little bit of the importance of the New York Times for the world. So we're going to see what's going to happen there. I think in Europe, it's not going to happen on that scale. But we're going to see what we saw the last 20 years. If there's a law case against one of the bigger tech companies, On that day, you sue them. The company that's suing the tech company has already a deal in the backhand. We see this with Springer. They tried to sue Google, and on the other side, they tried to make a deal for themselves. So the issue is there's a lot of cooperation, and that's what's going to happen, in my opinion, in the AI world too, like happened with Google. There's individual agreements between platforms and companies, and there's not going to be a general lawsuit that will change the industry. That's my opinion.
Thank you, Christoph. So are there more questions? If there are no questions from the audience, I'd like to come back to an industry perspective. You took over Dumont as a regional publisher. So, and you explained us how you drove this transition of Dumont. I'm asking myself what's going to happen with newspaper publishing in particular, but also news publishing in general. If all newspaper publishers sell now their newspaper subsidiaries in order to survive and become truly successful. So what's left? Who's taking over? And what's left from newspaper or news publishing in general? What's your perspective on access to news in a world where it is dominated with fake news and where qualitative quality news are even more important than ever, possibly?
Well, first of all, I myself come out of the digital world and kind of grew into publishing. So the first generation founders, the mid-90s, and so on. And I'm really, and we failed on developing this this part the last 30 years, I have to admit. But I'm very optimistic that the next 20 years, this will change. I'm pretty sure that we will regulate the business and the corporate, the big players without destroying the value they add to the system. I'm really optimistic on that one, but it's going to take another 2 decades. It's also a matter of generations, not only technology, it's also culture and the motivation, how and where and when you use media and consume media. And the next gen, I'm not talking about below 50, they do not use those offers they have. Even they do not use the offers that newspaper publishing publishers offer in the digital world, to be honest. I mean, this is another point. It's not just that it's got to be digital, it's got to be suited to the target groups. But without regulation, to make that point clear, it's not going to happen. And independent publishers, content publishers, will not be able to build up independent, substantial editorial staff that has the knowledge and competence and is also attractive for elite people. That journalists were elite, now they're not elite anymore, because they're only they have to save costs and so on, and best people do not enter journalism anymore on a general perspective. And we have to change this as a society, and we will recognize it within the next. I'm pretty optimistic, but it has to change. With not consolidation of newspapers is a good business model for the next, let's say, 10-15 years. You can make a lot of money on
from a business side, maybe not from
on
a
the business side.
But
in terms of relevance and being important for the basis of the society, meaning people that work, pay tax, and contribute to the society, form families and so on. For this major part of the society, newspaper publishers, print and digital, will not play any role anymore in 20 years.
Yeah. I see another question, Mike. Great to have you here. Mike, please.
Yeah, so I wondered if you could share what you think the most important lessons are from the reinvention process that you've gone through, and how that might inform a continuous reinvention process, as you indicated, you're going to have to deal with over the years.
Yeah, I think the learning is you have to have a clear idea about the future, and you really have to focus and overcome all this resistance you face. And I think we were way too slow, and there was way too many detours, and we are not technology focused and customer centric enough. But this is if you want to be successful in a digital world where everybody can access your product, you got to be customer centric, got to be tech driven as a mindset, you know. And let's say, for example, the leadership development program we set up focuses on two things: artificial intelligence and agile leadership. Why is that? Artificial intelligence, and I did a course at the MIT, and even the tech people there tell me artificial intelligence is 80% people and 20% technology in terms of an organization. Meaning it's the way you think, the way you act, the way you set up things, because AI can scale. So the technology core is the most important part to be able to scale, but you need the organization. That's a term of mindset. So technology driven is, to me, the core and customer centricity. And we are way too slow in that and have been way too slow. And this we can learn from those now big tech giants, because they have all those skills and methodologies well developed and well set up. And they learned from the European corporate culture and copied it and accelerated it. That's what I can see as the strong learnings from those 10 years.
Thanks.
Thank you, Christoph. I see another question. Walter, please share your question with us and Christoph. You're still muted. At least we don't hear anything. I don't see the muted microphones symbol. There might be another technical issue.
Yeah, I think it's a different tech issue.
Yeah. Maybe Christoph, as long as Walter is trying to work on his tech setup, you could elaborate a bit more. I wonder how you, as Dumont stands for print, a doomed industry. How do you get your talents today?
It's interesting.
How do you attract these talents?
The external image from the media industry perspective is still, oh, you're a news publisher. And, you know, public images, they are very stable and they change over time a little bit. But the public image we have in the media industry is not the company we are now. But if you go into the segments where we hire talents, they love our story, because you can imagine that there's a lot of great stories behind that rough storytelling that I was able to present you a little bit today. And it's interesting that the Gen Z, actually, they want to have some kind of stability, which gives 400 years of tradition, but also a community to grow, to expand, to try out things. And we're doing this. We're really doing this. We're offering this. The safe harbor, but also on the other side, the startup group. And the talents that we recruit and that spend some days with us to get us to know, they're all very surprised how we're really set up. Because if you Google it, and there's a lot of restructuring process and so on, and there's bad ratings on those recruiting platforms from people that left us, of course, or that we sold and so on. But one day within the company, no matter at what division, they like the Dumont story. And because we are so decentralized and we are looking for specific roles, we have no problem at all in finding talent and developing talent. And we do a lot of things as a mid-cap company, and being family owned and being personal and putting a lot of priority on the individual in themselves. There were some companies like in the martech industry, they sold to us even though they had better offers for bigger companies. Why? Because they want to do something relevant. They want to be in a relevant sector and not just one out of 80 investments where you're just a number. They want to be in a family where they can contribute. And this is the people we're looking for, and it's working very well.
In this case, tradition helps you. Walter, can you? Thank you, Walter. Walter just asked his question on the chat.
Can you read it for me, please?
I
can't read it without my glasses.
Let me see the chat.
I've got it, Christoph. Can you elaborate on your view on a future regulated world to assure society has independent news sources? Is this akin to the plurality rules in the analog rule, or is it different, and if so, how? Are you looking for a public funding scheme?
A good one. And if I would have the answer to that questions, I'd have the program and go public and go to the politicians and try to convince them to put that regulation. Of course, it's got a lot to do with copyright, but it's got a lot to do with how to develop fair competition. To give you an example on that, the Federal Cartel Office, they are responsible to define if you can buy another company. And they segment the markets, I say, by the quality of paper. They say the newspaper market is the same market than 50 years ago, because for them, it's a lot easier to segment that market by the quality of paper. But it's not true. All the advertising went to digital platforms, and they say, yeah, but this is a different market. And if you look at the media market that has converged in that way, that's just an example where you have to change this. They're serving themselves because it's a lot easier to do their job, this way. But they have to serve society. And this is where politicians got to be active. And we look at it. And nobody wants to touch those difficult and complex institutions. So just to give you an example, I don't believe that state and other central finance institutions will help. It's about fair competition, meaning that if you're a local publisher, that you're able to scale for example, in the advertising market and in the data market, in that segment where your reach is, and that you do not have to compete on a global scale with Google. That's what's happening right now. The baker around the corner is deciding to put $250 small advertising on a local newspaper that doesn't help anything, or $10 on Facebook, and instantly has like 30 responses. So that's the competition we have. And this has to be regulated. And it's about, the circumstances we develop for doing business, but I'm not a fan of, because there's so much dynamics in all those developments. And by the time you develop regulation that goes into the businesses, they're already not suitable anymore. That's the experience we had by other. So, but this is where politicians are right now. They want to help us. They build foundations that you can build up digital news portals. Yeah, we can do this, Aaron, but that's not the problem. They will not survive. They are just financed by good money, and you should throw good money into bad money. That's what you do, and it does not help. But the politicians think they did something for society, and that's why they do not understand where the real challenges are.
How likely is it, Christoph, that these regulation attempts come in time and are not too late? There's time for a short answer.
I'm always optimistic, and it's going to happen. I'm sure it's going to happen. It's just what I learned from the old publishers is thinking indicates. And he explained to me his world starting by World War II. And he explained what happened indicates, then there was radio, there was licenses in Germany for newspapers publishers. That was a special in history. And then there was radio, and then came the television, then we tried that, and on and so on. But he did not understand the internet anymore. But, if you look at society, I think the thing we have right now is we're just too short-term thinking, overrating and underestimating what we have to do for the future. And the last book I read last year that really impressed me was that just now died, Henry Kissinger, with leadership, where he described 6 leaders, starting with Konrad Adenauer, because they had a vision of how to develop the society for 20 years and not just for the phase they elected for. And I think we have to come back to that perspective, and we need a lot more crisis. And I'm pretty optimistic that mankind, and especially Western society, will come back to that. We're going to have tough next 10, 15 years, but I'm really optimistic that's going to happen.
Thank you, Christoph. Vision, optimism. This is a fantastic conclusion for these interesting insights you shared with us. With this, I hand over back to Jason to conclude today's seminar of Citi, Columbia, and IMMAA.
And thank you very much. This was an excellent talk. Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Doctor. These are really interesting topics. We're really going to see a wonderful amount of information out of this. Just a reminder, next month will be organized by Paolo Faustino, and we look forward to hearing from that. And so we'll see you in February. Thanks to everybody, and have a wonderful day. And again, Happy New Year.
Thank you again, Christoph. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.